Lighting is arguably the most important element to consider when it comes to achieving a cinematic look. It's a massive point of focus for Hollywood, video production companies, and YouTubers. Yet, you don't actually have to spend a crazy amount of money to be able to start using lighting to get those cinematic vibes going. In fact, you can make a massive difference to your videos even by just using one light source. So in this video, we're going to go over the basics of cinematic lighting and how you can use it to start making your videos look banging. So let's start with what's instantly going to give you the most bang for your buck. If I had to give you one sentence that would sum up how you could better use lighting, it'd be that angles are everything. Right now, my source of light is a window, and so it's facing me head on and I'm really well lit, but I wouldn't say that this looks particularly cinematic. But notice the difference if I just turn about 45 degrees in the other direction. Now I've got shadows cast across the side of my face. This is instantly a lot more visually pleasing. There's depth to the image and it just looks a million times better. Taking it a step further, if I then spend a little time setting my camera up properly so that I'm filming from the shadow side of my face and my exposure is set to the brightest part of the image, well, now this shot looks really good. And this is just me sat in my living room next to the window. Nothing fancy at all. But there is a problem, and that is natural light. It's pretty great when it's working for you, but it can be pretty unreliable, and because you don't have much control over it, using it is only going to get you so far. So if you really want to start taking your filmmaking to the next level, then you're going to need a source of light that you can control. So to demonstrate how you can do this, I'll be using the Molus X60 RGB, which ZHIYUN were kind enough to send me to help make this video. The main goal of any lighting setup should really be to create an atmosphere. If you know the mood that you're trying to evoke in your audience, then that's going to dictate what choices you make when it comes to lighting up your scene. What angle should you light your subject from? How much contrast do you want to create between the highlights and the shadows? What temperature of light or what color light do you want to use? How will you motivate your light? If you don't know what that means, don't worry, we'll cover it later. Now let's take a look at some scenes that demonstrate these points. And if you happen to be a Hollywood agent who's searching for an actor that specializes in looking vacant whilst drinking coffee, well, look no further because you have found your man. In our first scene, we're going to look at how the angle of our light source affects the mood of the footage. Our first angle is pretty standard. We've got the subject lit from a raised side angle, and this is casting shadows across the other side of the face. I shot this at 6 AM while it was still dark to better show the lighting angles, and I would say that for this sort of setup, usually you'd perhaps benefit from the general area being a little less dark than this. If we look at a clip from the A-roll for this video, we're actually using 3 lights. We have our main light or key light on this side, there's a backlight behind me to help me stand out, and we have a dimmer light, which is called a fill light, on the other side of my face to soften the shadows a little bit. Here though, we're only using the one light, so because the room is pretty dark, we've got some moody vibes going. If we change the angle of the light to above our subject, the mood changes. This kind of lighting makes our subject look more vulnerable or anxious, which he should be. Health and safety was not observed to get this shot, and there's a fair chance that that light is going to fall and hit him in the face. Changing our angle again to below our subject, and well, now he just looks dodgy. In fact, he definitely looks like he's up to something, and I'm leaning towards thinking he should be put on some sort of watch list. I think we've covered angles now, let's move on. Next, let's talk about contrast. The lighting in this very cozy scene is low contrast, meaning there's only a small amount of difference between the highlights and the shadows. Low contrast lighting is very commonly used because it looks natural. It's very effective at conveying positive or neutral emotions, so that makes it the first choice for the majority of shots. High contrast lighting, on the other hand, is great for creating a heavier and more atmospheric feel. I got this shot by positioning the X60 on a tripod outside my bedroom in the hallway and just leaving the door slightly ajar. I was really happy with this one. The contrast between warm light from the X60 and the cold shadows in the rest of the room is 100% what I was going for. So even sitting in bed can look cinematic if done right. Now let's discuss color. Colors can represent different emotions, and depending on how extreme your use of them is, might represent how intense that emotion is being felt by the subject. Blue is often used to represent deep emotions like sadness, whereas red is usually associated with more fiery emotions like anger. This scene right here is my Oscar submission. Look at that. That is an angry man.
Another great thing about having a light with RGB capabilities is that it gives you so much versatility with things like this. There is a color for every mood that you can think of. Again, for the sake of demonstration, we're using very extreme amounts of light here, and most scenes would likely be a lot more subtle. So for our last scene, let's tone things down a little bit. Our final point to discuss is motivation. How do you motivate light? What does that even mean? Well, put simply, it's by having other light sources either in the shot or implied as being present so that the lighting in your scene makes sense to the viewer. Here, it may look like I'm not using a light at all and that I'm only using natural light coming in from the window, but that is exactly the point. The motivation for the key light on the side of my face is the window. It adds meaning and naturalness to the lighting, and if I turn it off, you actually can see what a big difference it was making. It's scenes like this where I think having a controllable light actually makes the biggest difference. Getting a cinematic look doesn't necessarily have to mean that everything has to look like it's been lit up to high heaven. Sometimes the subtle approach is the best option.
I've really enjoyed using the Molus X60 to help create this video. If you want to try it out for yourself, then I have a link in the description that you can use, and make sure you use the discount code too, and that'll give you 10% off. And thank you to ZHIYUN for being the first sponsor of this channel. That concludes Cinematic Lighting 101. Obviously, there's so much more to this topic than what we've covered today, but hopefully this has given you a good foundation to build off of. Please do hit the like button if you enjoyed this video, because that helps it spread to other people with similar interests, which is a win-win for everyone. And I will see you in the next video.